3, 2, 1.
Please do not change channel.
From Krypton Radio, brought to you by Famous Faces and Funnies and Off the Chain with Yvonne Mason. It's the Hangin' with Web Show Radio Hour, the Internet's premier pop culture talk radio show. You're tuned in, you're logged on, and now, your host, award-winning author and journalist G.W. Pomichter. Who are you hanging with?
Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome to the Hangin' with Web Show Radio Hour. I'm G.W. Pomichter.
I'm Sage Ia.
And we are here in the studio, and we're joined on the line tonight with special guest Ray Ballard from the Heartland Steampunk Association. So, can anybody guess what we're going to talk about?
I don't know.
Chickens.
Chickens.
Why not? They're a thing, I guess. No? Okay. No, we're going to talk about all things steampunk tonight. So, we're going to throw this out to our audience, and then when we come back on the other side, we're going to be joined by our guest, Ray Ballard, from the Heartland Steampunk Association, and we're going to dive into the topic a little bit more. So I'm going to just throw this out there, and y'all can mull it over. What is steampunk?
Steampunk is...
I honestly don't know.
Steampunk I find a lot of fun, but... actually, all I can think of is a man in a pith helmet with a large gun.
Krypton Radio, World Wide Web. Did y'all do any better than that? Did anybody do any better than that? Well, I'll tell you what. Let's bring our guest on. It's Ray Ballard from the Heartland Steampunk Association. Ray, how are you tonight, man?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. How are you guys?
Oh, we are fantastic. We are prepping ourselves for Sci-Fi Bartow.
We are gearing up.
I see what you did there. I see what she did there. For Sci-Fi Bartow this weekend and all things steampunk. This should be really, really cool.
Oh, we are so excited. All of the steampunkers in Central Florida have set their chronographers and their jumps to Bartow for Saturday. Well, actually, starting off, we're going to be jumping in on Friday night for a steampunk party, and then Saturday, we're there all day long for a wonderful steampunk event.
That's going to be fantastic. So we asked our audience straight off the bat, and we heard some neat stuff that we picked up from the internet, some folks trying to define steampunk. So, Ray, why don't you go ahead and what is steampunk? Let's tell everybody.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Let's go ahead and tell everybody what is steampunk.
Okay, steampunk originally got its name from a type of genre in writing. About a little over 30 years ago, 32 years ago now, there were a bunch of authors out there that were writing books about cyberpunk. You had Philip K. Dick and a bunch of others writing these, dystopian, areas of the future and all this kind of weird stuff. And there was a bunch of people that said, you know what? What if we go back in time, take the technology from the Victorian era, and start writing some science fiction about that? So the official name got quoted about 32 years ago as steampunk.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, and for those of you that don't know, those early novels, they didn't have a genre, which was interesting. So writers were sending in work, and publishers didn't know how to publish it. They had one category was called Gonzo Historical. That's a real thing, by the way, guys. Gonzo Historical. Victorian Fantasies was another one. And it was K.W. Jeter who, in a letter, coined the term steampunk.
Yep.
And so it was a way to describe a science fiction genre that featured Victorian era or early industrial era technologies in a contemporary story setting. That's what distinguishes it, because many people go and they define steampunk as something from Jules Verne or those early science fiction writers, and what sets them apart is they were writing Victorian fantasy science fiction in the Victorian era. So the technology that they were working with was their technology. They couldn't imagine a cell phone or any of the modern technology. So they didn't have a choice. They had to write with what they knew, whereas later writers who coined the term steampunk actually have a choice. They can write their story in a contemporary environment about contemporary issues. They choose to set it in an alternate history using that Victorian era, early industrial era technology. So therein lies the distinct difference. So those of you who thought like H.G. Wells is a steampunk writer, well, I guess technically in his descriptives he would be, but he didn't have a choice. He was dealing with the technology he had. Yeah.
And that's what we kind of tell people is it's a science fiction based with the technology and based with the time of Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, but it is a retro look at our future.
Exactly.
So if technology just basically stopped with steam and gears and diesel and that kind of stuff and went, that's enough. We don't need anything else. We have airships. We have developed time travel. We have, found very cool things. The thing we love about steampunk, and all of us steampunkers agree on, is you can't get it wrong. You cannot get it wrong. And we state this so many times. Unlike a lot of times when we show up at a lot of the conventions, a lot of the events and that kind of stuff, and you've got some of the other cosplayers that are kind of getting catty and getting on each other a little bit about, oh, your costume doesn't look quite right, and yours isn't this, and yours isn't this. With steampunk, my reality, it might be totally different than your reality.
It is. What's amazing about the steampunk, particularly from an aesthetic point of view, is that one of the things we enjoy so much are the mashups. They're a contemporary costume with a steampunk flair, and there's no limit to the imagination when you're designing something that never existed. So
and that was so. My wife and I, who are the presidents of the Heartland Steampunk Association, our first thing we ever did about 6 years ago, we were going to head over to the Tampa Bay Comic-Con, and I asked her, I said, do you want to go dressed up? And I said, I really don't want to go as a superhero. And she's like, well, what do you want to go as? And I said, I really want to go steampunk. And she's like, absolutely. So we did our first mashup. We did time-traveling steampunk wizards.
Awesome. That's got everything.
We love Harry Potter so much. We love steampunk so much that one of our very first characters that we ever did are Steam Potter.
Steampunk Harry Potter. That's awesome, man. And real quick, as we get ready to go on here, I want to welcome to the line. We have got Tara Coggler and MaryAnn Poulakos, and Terry and MaryAnn are from Coggler Emporium. Thank you, ladies, for joining us tonight.
Hey, thank you.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the conversation. Our early we just kind of kicked off here, and we just kind of got started. So on the line we have Ray Ballard from the Heartland Steampunk Association, and so far what we've been trying to do for our audience is we've been trying to define as best we can what is steampunk. So both Ray and I had our shot at kind of throwing it out there, but ladies, to you, what is steampunk?
Well, I'd like to reiterate what you guys were just saying about the mashups. That's one of my favorite things about steampunk and the steampunk look, especially for cosplayers, because you can be steampunk Tinkerbell, you can be a steampunk pirate, steampunk Sailor Moon, any cosplay you can think of. Just change the coloring and add your accessories, and you've got it steampunk.
Well, we are actually really excited here because our followers of the Hangin Web Show know that we have our own. I guess there's a technical term for it in the convention circuit. It's called a booth babe. Only mine is literally a babe, not like a girl babe, a babe, because we have Cosplay Michael that travels with us, and Cosplay Michael this weekend will be debuting steampunk Thor.
My God!
He gave us the idea, and he said, "Dad, I want to do steampunk Thor Ragnarok edition." And I said, "Okay." And then I looked online because I'm not a cosplayer, I'm not very handy, and I looked online for ideas, and there aren't a lot.
No, there
weren't. Just weren't a lot of ideas that were Thor accurate and steampunk accurate. There were a lot that leaned one way or another. And so we took his Thor Ragnarok costume, and he and I went over it, and we added some rivets where they needed to be, and some clockworks and some fun stuff, and some, gave it that gold and bronze tones in some places, and it was just a lot of fun to do, and to see Michael's face light up as he saw his existing Thor helmet turn into something a little bit different. And
that's going to be great.
It is. It's going to be exciting, and we're excited for him to debut Steampunk Thor Ragnarok, is I guess what he's calling it.
We were so excited because Michael would actually come over to our booth when we were all at the Central Florida Comic-Con, and he kept looking at our steampunk stuff and snitch himself a couple pieces of candy and then come back over and look at some more stuff. And it was so great to see such a young person really getting into cosplay and really wanting to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, and well, that has been Cosplay Michael's motto from the beginning is putting the play into cosplay. It's difficult for Mom and Dad and Dina here as we try to make him a costume that will be both fun to take pictures with and will stand up to the play that Michael puts in the cosplay.
Yeah.
So,
and steampunk provides so much opportunity for that.
Yeah, there was so many great things that we could do to this costume, and I kept having to say, okay, what happens when he slides across the pavement? And, how long will that last? And so it was a lot of, it posed some really interesting, challenging. We're going to leave the audience with the formal definition of steampunk. If I can find my note here. It was here. I promise I knew it at one point. Okay, there we go. So before we go to our break, and then we come back, we're going to talk some more to Ray Ballard and Tara and MaryAnn, who, by the way, out there on Krypton Radio and the World Wide Web, if you run into MaryAnn at an event with the Coggler Emporium, she prefers it if you would just say, "Hi, Pokey." So.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's her preference. So we have Tara and Pokey from Coggler Emporium on the line. We've got Heartland Steampunk Association's Ray Ballard on the line, and we're going to be right back after a few messages here. But we're going to leave you with the technical definition of steampunk, and when we come back on the other side, we'll tear that apart and talk about it and
lay it on
what's about it. Steampunk is a subgenre of science fiction or science fantasy that incorporates technology and aesthetic designs inspired by the 19th century industrial steam-powered machinery era. That's a mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a mouthful.
Okay, and so we'll talk about what all that means when we come back from this break. And until then, stay tuned in and stay logged on because we'll be right back.
Best-selling and award-winning author of true crime and crime fiction, Yvonne Mason is back with a brand new book, The Pink Canary, a book that delves into the life of a drag queen and a marvelous whodunit. You can find this and all of Yvonne's other works on Amazon.com or find Yvonne Mason on Facebook and Twitter.
He's gonna kill me.
Buy your copy of Pink Canary now.
Joanne Fisher's The Spanish Doll. Secrets in Italy? Oh yes. Her beauty strikes him like a thunderbolt sent by the goddess Venus. When Fiore is given a peculiar gift, a Spanish doll, she is thrown into a whirlwind of entangled passion, money, secrets, and love. Get swept away today by Hangin with Web Show featured author Joanne Fisher's The Spanish Doll. Available now on Amazon.com.
Now on Amazon.com. War Calls, Love Cries, a Civil War novel by Mark Barie. Isaac Wells is an innocent farm boy living in upstate New York. His dreams are shattered by a treacherous brother and the onset of a devastating civil war. War Calls and Love Cries is a fast-moving historical narrative. It is an emotional roller coaster ride and a riveting must-read book that you will think about and talk about for a long time to come. War Calls, Love Cries is the kind of book you will cherish for a lifetime. On Amazon.com today.
Every year, tens of millions of people flock to Florida for its sunny beaches and world-famous tourist attractions. Most never learn about the strange and unusual locations just off the beaten path. From the UFOs of Gulf Breeze to Robert the Haunted Doll in Key West. Learn about the myths, monsters, and legends from the dark side of the Sunshine State with author Mark Muncy and illustrator Carrie Schultz in their books Eerie, Florida and Freaky Florida from the History Press. Find them at EerieFlorida.com or wherever books are sold.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Hangin' with Web Show Radio Hour. I'm GW Pomichter.
I am Sagea.
And we are on the line with Mr. Ray Ballard from the Heartland Steampunk Association, and Tara Coggler, and MaryAnn Poulakos. I never get that right. Pokey, help me out here.
Perfect. Yeah, Pokey's fine.
Okay, Pokey. From the Coggler Emporium. Coggler Emporium, for those of you that don't know, we're going to put links in the description of this episode so you can find them online and check them out on Facebook and across social media. Coggler Emporium, among other things, is a maker of cool steampunk designs.
It is so super cool.
From masks to... Oh my God! The piece we for the Hangin' with Web Show, we were at the Brevard County Renaissance Fair just about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and we had the opportunity to use one of their pieces on set, and it was amazing. It was a great addition. So if you catch those Renaissance Fair episodes of the Hangin' with Web Show video show, which drop every day at 2 p.m.
Nice plug.
Shameless plug, yeah. You'll be able to see some great pieces that are on our center table there in our interview studio. So thank you guys very much, and thank you for coming on tonight. We earlier, before the break, we talked a little bit about the definition of steampunk and what its aesthetic and its all about, really. Before the break, and before we were joined by our friends from Coggler Emporium, we were discussing the fact that while many people credit traditional science fiction pioneers like H.G. Wells with the steampunk movement, one of the distinctions that sets them outside of the steampunk movement is that they didn't have a choice. When they used clockwork, when they used the technology of the Victorian era, it was because that was high technology at the time, used to an imaginative effect. Today, it's a writer or a television producer or a film producer's choice to use that aesthetic and to use that technology to tell their story, and it's usually a contemporary story, a contemporary futuristic story. So what do you guys think? What are some of the reasons that people are drawn to that era, to that technology, when telling a contemporary story? What do you guys think? Let's go over to Ray. Ray, what do you think?
A lot of times, I think it's like the innocence and just the natural feel of everything. From our big thing, when we actually get together and we do our stuff, we like to be makers. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that stuff, when you see it going on, we like to take stuff that's out there and we like to make it something different. And so I think a lot of that, when the authors go to that, they like to see that simplicity. They like to see the gears and the steam and how would all that work. And it's one of those things. The leather, how do you take the metal, the brass, and take all that instead of going, oh, here's a bunch of futuristic stuff that I really don't have to explain because it could be aliens, it could be whatever. And I think that's what the authors really like, is we've got to take stuff that has happened and we've got to keep going with it instead of just going, oh, here's a bunch of aliens and here's a bunch of cool alien warcraft.
Well, and it's like, as you pointed out, there is something incredibly attractive to a reader or a television watcher or a moviegoer. There's something really, really that draws them in when you can see how something works. In today's world, technology has grown so far, so fast, and gotten so small that the inner workings of a microchip they boggle the mind. And every day we talk about technologies that are on the nanotechnology scale. And there's something incredibly comforting about something that you could pick up, and whether it takes you through time or it's a spaceship or there's something comforting about being able to take a wrench and fix it without having to know how, the molecules are put together, because modern technology is all about how small can you go, and what was once switches are now electrical impulses inside computers.
Absolutely.
So there's something comforting about being able to fix your computer with a wrench.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's just the slowly and surely we're all going back further in time to, further back, and I just think that it's just more interesting to see things that were made so long ago brought to the forefront of now, as opposed to new age technology.
Absolutely fantastic. You guys over at Heartland were talking about one of your early cosplays, the Steam Potter cosplay. And what's really interesting about that, I had an entire sort of academic discussion with my kids when they were reading Harry Potter. And we had a discussion about why some of the wizards are so fascinated with Muggle technologies, the simpler technologies. And what came up, and I want to throw this out for you guys, is an observation that we came up with. That is, if you have magic, by definition, your technology will never advance because necessity is the mother of invention. So if you can fly on a broom, you're never going to invent an airplane. If you can travel, fast using a train, there's no need for a car. It's not until we come to a place where some necessity is created. Replacing the train with the family automobile was as simple as people moving into the suburbs, needing a way to get to and from work daily instead of weekly. And that necessitated a vehicle that was at your disposal, and so we mainstreamed the automobile. So in a steampunk world, if you had been able to, say, discover a graviton in an industrial era, and you could control gravity in that era, would that have stifled the technological growth to a point where we might theoretically be looking at a steampunk world? Because, hey, if we can control gravity, then we don't need to invent a larger crane or a more technologically advanced spaceship. We can do that with this particle, and therefore clockworks and steam engines and those things that get that particle are more than enough. We've just created magic, and therefore we don't need technology. What do you guys think about that? How does that work for you guys? What do you guys think?
I think that hits it right on the head right there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, I had an opportunity. There was a gentleman who wrote a graphic novel called The Legends of Steampunk, Fear the Reaper. And it deals kind of like with that, and we actually were turning it into a movie, and hopefully Sir Jack will get back into doing more of it. But what it was a scientist from the future, from present time, who accidentally time travels back to 1865 to when the very first mention of any theoretical time travel from a scientist back then comes up, because they find what the locals think is gold, but he knows is the new fifth element.
Ooh. Again, so once you find that thing, yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden that was the catalyst. So you go this 1865, you have all of the, people walking around in the Wild West with their typical revolvers, horses, all the typical, stuff. But all of a sudden there's a fifth element introduced now into that technology, where the scientists, the guys who really start tinkering with it, start to develop some really cool things. Anti-gravity blasters. Instead of just revolvers, now there's these new guns that fire off stuff. Instead of people riding horses, there's like almost like speeders.
Yeah, no, that's just it. If you could manipulate the process of need. So, again, gravity, energy, these are all things that have presented us with need. And if you could limit the need that was coming out of something, then by definition you would limit the evolution of technology. If you can accomplish it with gears and springs, you will. Yep. Because why go to something smaller and more electronic? Or why would you do that if you didn't have to? Because every time you do that, your consumers lose the ability to tinker and to make new things.
And the gears look
so
so
I
cool.
couldn't open up my Mac. If I opened up my Mac, I know that I would find myself lost in...
Well, that's what I'm trying to do that in my art, because I don't know how to make anything electrically move. I don't know how to, I don't know anything about electronics. But I'm finding a way to get my gears to move. But you can move them with your fingers, and you push or you blow on them, and they all move.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't know how to do anything electrical.
Yeah, and see, and that's it. So if you were capable of accomplishing it mechanically, then by definition, technology wouldn't be stunted because you'd reach the same effect, but it would not be forced to alter. And
right, which is I like mixing the steampunk with the Renaissance era too, because it just totally simplifies.
Oh yeah, hey guys, the first proverbial sprockets or clockworks were literally catapults and bolts and things like that that were larger versions of what would become steel and metal and clockworks later on. Well, but we were doing that.
Think about some of those, the counterweights and the weights to raise those huge heavy bridges.
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of stuff. In fact, it's kind of funny that you're talking about the Renaissance mashup. That's actually my wife and I's next characters we're doing. She's doing a steampunk, sorceress queen, and I'm going to be a steampunk knight.
Ooh.
Oh, that would be great.
So awesome.
Do you have an awesome knight name?
What's a great knight name? Let me hear it.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking you. All I can think of is Sir Steampunk, so there's got to be a better one.
Oh, and that's the thing is right now we're developing the characters. That's so people always ask, well, how do you make your steampunk stuff? And we always say start off by developing a character. Mm-hmm. Think about what you want your character to do, and that's what we usually do. So, like I said, the first one we liked Harry Potter, we liked steampunk, we mashed it up.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I like Legos.
We have to take. She is flashing us over there. We've got about 2 minutes we have to take another break. So, but on our way out, we want to remind everybody, steampunk, for those of you who are tuning in late, is both a genre and an aesthetic created when science fiction or science fantasy merges with Victorian era, early industrial era technology. And when you merge those things together, you get an amazing aesthetic and a wonderful genre to create in. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about the roots of steampunk, where it came from, and some of our guests' favorite steampunk tales, favorite steampunk stories.
Oh, yes.
And we're going to share with you some of the 10 best steampunk novels, film, television, you name it. So we'll do that on the other side of the break. In the meantime, stay tuned in and stay logged on, and we'll be right back.
It started purely as a literature. Now, when people say steampunk, they think, jewelry and artifacts and costumes. There's steampunk conventions. It's kind of assumed a life outside of the printed page.
Murder by the Gods from author William G. Collins is available today. Murder by the Gods is a mystery thriller set in the glorious past of ancient Egypt, when the son of the Scorpion King suddenly collapses after receiving a mysterious threat from the god Seth. The prince is convinced it is the gods who are trying to kill his family. Murder by the Gods is filled with adventure and romance in a kingdom that would become known as the Land of the Pharaohs. Murder by the Gods from author William G. Collins is available on Amazon.com today. From some of today's best-selling, award-winning authors comes 22 page-turning tales, Cursed Lands.
Cursed Lands will lead you through one doomed world after another in a haunting dystopian urban fantasy.
Join the courageous as they battle for survival across worlds where fae, vampires, angels, witches, and more roam freely.
Cursed Lands is coming soon on AppleBooks, Kobo, and Nook.
Pre-order your copy for just 99 cents today. Channeling the Mothership is an exciting journey into the higher mysteries. Certified psychic medium and clairvoyant Jerry McDaniel's readings, writings, and messages have been received by thousands of people in more than 45 countries. These messages have been obtained by channeling his higher self. How does he do it? Is it a blessing or a curse? And what lay beyond the reach of your five senses? Channeling the Mothership. Explore the mysteries of the spiritual and the metaphysical. Channeling the Mothership by author Jerry McDaniel. Available on Amazon.com today.
Devarius has lost everything. His parents murdered, his sister kidnapped, and the new village he called home destroyed. The Dragonia Empire is out of control, destroying anything and everything in their path, searching for the resistance. Devarius is left with no choice but to find the Resistance, join them, and hope he can help them defeat the Dragonia Empire once and for all to bring peace to the land of Keldroga. Dragonia, Rise of the Wyverns, Dragonia Empire Volume 1.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Hangin' with Web Show Radio Hour. I'm GW Pomichter.
I'm Sagea.
And we are on the line with our good friends from Coggler Emporium. We've got Pokey and Tara. Thank you guys so much for calling in. And with Ray Ballard on the line from Heartland Steampunk Association. And we're talking about all things steampunk. Steampunk, that's right, from the aesthetic to the origins and literature to what would lead to a steampunk environment. We talked about the last hour, but we're going to look at the genre itself in this next segment, and we're going to talk a little bit about where it comes from and those early literary roots. And so I want to remind everybody at the top of the hour, we talked a little bit about K.W. Jeter, who coined the phrase steampunk in a letter to a publisher about those early novels. And again, they were, at that time, no one knew what they were, and publishers had a hard time categorizing them into weird little subgenres that they were just kind of making up. One included the term gonzo history, which I have no idea where to go with that. The other one was called Victorian fantasies. I guess that makes a little bit more sense. And K.W. Jeter said, no, it's steampunks is what it is. And so, and early authors included Tim Powers, James Blaylock, and, of course, the earliest steampunk novel, the 1979 novel Morlock Night, which was, again, by K.W. Jeter. So looking at those roots, guys, there are tons. And nowadays, steampunk is more and more prevalent in our science fiction, and because it's so much fun to write.
It is.
And so visually stunning. And if you're a writer, you have so much to grab onto in terms of environmentals and what you're going to describe. It's amazing. So I'm going to ask each of our guests to kind of go around here. Do you guys have a favorite steampunk novel or book? We'll start with Ray, and then we'll go down the line. So, Ray, favorite steampunk novel or book?
Actually, one of my favorite is Reeves's Mortal Engine series, which is apocalyptic steampunk. It's basically we've destroyed the world in a 60-minute war, and people had to go back because now technology is completely wiped out. They had to go back to either stationary cities, moving cities, cities in the ocean, or cities up in the air. It is one of my favorite series. It's originally he was originally going to write it for adults, and he ended up, his publisher said, bring it down. I think we'll sell some more copies if you read it, if you do it for teens and young adults. I still love it, and they just turned it into a movie. And I thought the movie was great. Amazing story. And again, there's always if you're going to tell a story and you're going to lock it up in the aesthetic and the technologies of steampunk, then you have to sort of it's something we don't have to do when we do conventions and when Michael does cosplay or you guys are out there. You don't have to justify. It's all imagination. It's all creativity. But in storytelling, you have to justify why technology is different than what people know. And when you present it in a post-apocalyptic world where you can say, look, all the things that you had that were, all charged up and ready to go, those are gone now. So if you can't build it, if you can't manipulate it, if it's not mechanical, you can't use it. And so all of a sudden we have a reason to build on that technology. And it's a reason that's so profound. I think many people won't realize this, but even in the electronic world, the most sophisticated aircraft on the planet Earth is Air Force One. And yet it is the least high-tech. Everything in it is analog. It's all switches and switchboards, and it's to make a call off of Air Force One is to literally go through one of those old switchboards. Because it's a way to... Yep. And the reason for that is if a nuclear war ever happens, it's going to wipe out all of our technology.
That's right. Anything.
And if you go to the vacuum tubes, if you go to the old switches, those can all be quickly swapped out. It's going to burn them up for a second. They're going to swap them out, and we're back in action.
That's right. Anything with microtechnology, especially microelectronic technology, and EMP wipes it out. So anything that you're going to build from there forward in order to be immune to that technology is going to be mechanical in nature. So it's going to be, again, vacuum tubes. It's going to be clockworks. It's going to be things that you know how to fix and you can tweak. So, okay, that's a great one. Let's go over to Pokey. Pokey, what do you think? What's your favorite steampunk story? What inspires you when you're creating your art?
Well, inspiration and steampunk book, that's two totally different things, because we just really have not had any time to sit down with any kind of novels or books and read. We're constantly working and making stuff.
So what kind of stories in the steampunk genre? What are you telling yourself? What kind of stories are you telling yourself when you're creating your stuff?
Oh, well, mostly we're just throwing stuff at each other.
Like that. Hopefully not heavy. Hopefully not heavy stuff. Yeah.
No. I mean, we're really inspired by, I don't know, just that general aesthetic, that mechanical aesthetic that really just speaks to you when you're working, huh? My inspiration is my favorite two things that I said it just before the break is Legos. I'm obsessed with Legos, and
that's a good obsession, by the way. I think that's a healthy obsession.
Very.
Yes.
I have this huge collection, and I have turned it into steampunk, and I even have a steampunk Lego book. And I look at the pictures and I try to figure out what other people are doing and make it my own, of course. But I want to find that way to make my gears move and work. But
that's awesome.
Not in Lego form, in my own form. I take all the weirdest, strangest pieces and put them together, and you couldn't even tell that it's Legos,
That is amazing. Tara, how about you?
A whole bunch of craziness.
Terry?
Well, that's kind of like the standard answer, I guess, for both of us, because we see things that we like that are steampunk or not steampunk that we can make steampunk. So it's really not so much the books as pictures and video clips and things like that.
Well, and I'm going to remind everybody out there on the World Wide Web, in the modern era today, a photo, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. And so a television show, a movie, these things are all worth even more, and so much so that Oxford University has acknowledged photography, videography, and television as literature in their literary department. So you guys are right on but don't worry about those written words, because while they're important to some of us, like if I write books, like me.
Okay, my first that really got me into it was watching Sherlock Holmes' Game of Shadows way too many times.
Wonderful. Yes. As a matter of fact, that is I think number 3 in the list of top steampunk films.
Then Edgar Allan Poe was one of the first to focus on the balloon and the Zeppelin. And when I was a little girl, that was my favorite thing. And I started thinking, I saw Cirque du Soleil. And then I started having dreams of how I could create my own Zeppelin within a circus act, because that's what I was studying at the time. So that I said, okay, how can I do that? And then, of course, that goes on, and then I start doing this, and then the Zeppelin comes up, and it's just all this stuff from the past comes up, and I'm just like, I'm going to just mix all of this stuff together, and what can I do with it? And this was way before steampunk started becoming what it is. And I just didn't know what to do with it. So it kind of just harbored within me. And then when MaryAnn came around, it was like it just came out of both of us like crazy.
That's amazing. And you know what? Since we did that, we segued into film and television and visual references. We'll start at the beginning once more. We'll start over there with Ray. Do you have a favorite steampunk visual, steampunk television show, movie? It's just something that's really done a good job with steampunk.
Oh my gosh, there. What? Go ahead.
The League Extraordinary.
Oh yeah, there are so many. One of my favorites is probably the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
with Captain Nemo. Oh my gosh, it
was incredible to see both some of our favorite fictional characters working together on film, and to see the aesthetic that they created around that gathering was breathtaking. It was. I'm as a fiction writer myself, it wasn't the most captivating story on the planet, but the idea of seeing these characters together in one, for me, and so well portrayed.
Right, and what if, again, if you go to the graphic novel was much better and could deal with a little bit more cutting issues that a movie probably, with some of the stuff in it, wouldn't have been able to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think Sean Connery would have loved to play the Alan Quartermain that was in the graphic novel.
Yeah.
But it was one of my favorites. And then, go to anime, Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh, don't know that one.
That is one of my... Oh, that's one of my favorite Japanese cartoons that, again, is steampunk. Very much.
Awesome.
So and then probably television series would be like Warehouse 13.
Yes.
That's one of my favorites. There's just so many. I'm such a... I actually, my real job is I teach digital media production. And so to see
that's homework. You have to watch these things. You have to know what's going on in the world.
Yes, I have to.
That's right.
I have to all the time. And my students, my kids love that I do what I do, and they love to see all that stuff. And to get them excited, I've got so many students that are so excited for this upcoming weekend to go over to Sci-Fi Bartow and just see steampunk live.
Yeah.
Besides just me doing it and bringing it to the school, they're so excited to get over there and just. Yeah, I've got a group of students that are going to do a documentary on what is steampunk.
Oh, that is fantastic! That is awesome, and Warehouse 13 is a great example because this is a world inside of a world, and in the warehouse world, in the universe they create with a warehouse, it is a world that is fueled by this fifth element, as you called it, by this magic. There's something magical about this stuff, and because of that, much of the technology in the warehouse is very steampunk. It's very mechanical, from the Farnsworth video phone all the way across, and so they're locked into that time. Meanwhile, it takes place in the same universe as sci-fi's Eureka, and so you have the high tech end of things in the real world, as it were, and then in the world of magic and mystery. The warehouse in the steampunk environment is just fantastic. Guys, we have one more minute till we take a commercial break again. And as we break, when we come back on the other side, I want you guys to get a chance to talk about your organizations a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about Sci-Fi Bartow and some of the things we're looking forward to coming up down the road. So in the meantime, everybody stay tuned in and stay logged on, and we'll be right back.
Steampunk is the genre that looks at a somewhat Victorian or old-time world where elegance and steam methods of transportation are combined.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics. The Rite of Wands. One boy, one right. And a world of deadly secrets that could change the course of history forever. It's time for The Rite of Wands by Mackenzie Floor. When a horrible fate reveals itself during the Rite of Wands ceremony, Mirda must find a way to change his destiny. Forbidden from revealing the future, he is granted a wand and magical powers in order to save himself and those he loves. But Mirda is not the only one with secrets. The Rite of Wands by Mackenzie Floor, available on Amazon.com now.
This is Cosplay Michael with the Hangin with Love show. I want to tell you about my friends at Embellis Effects in Orlando, Florida. They've got makeup, costumes, and props for all of your costume needs. And the team at Embellis Effects is helpful and friendly. Embellis Effects is one of my favorite places, and I know it will be yours too. I'll see you there. Or go to BallasFX.com. And remember, cosplay is for everyone.
From the imagination of author Kevin J. Kessler, the Rosinante dragons are no more. They have fallen into the obscurity of lore. Now warrior Valentine Barie and Seraphina, a magically gifted princess, are on a mission to save the world of Terra. Together they must face the Rosinante legacy and combat the greatest threat their world has ever known. In the end, who is stronger, the man or the dragon? Find out in Kevin J. Kessler's The Rosinante series on Amazon.com today.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Hangin' with Web Show Radio Hour. I'm GW Howinger.
And I'm Sagea.
And we have on the line Ray Ballard of the Heartland Steampunk Association and Tara Coggler and MaryAnn Poulakos, Pokey, from Coggler Emporium. And we have been talking for the last 45 minutes or so about all things steampunk.
Steampunk.
What it is, where it came from, some popular steampunk stories and tales. But we want to make sure you guys know a little bit about these groups that Tara and MaryAnn and Ray are part of. And so, Tara, MaryAnn, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about Coggler Emporium and where we can find you guys online?
Well, we are Cogglers. So
this is a great word.
It's a great word.
With that, yeah.
Yes.
A coggler is a person who applies cogs to something without fundamentally altering it. So
sweet.
That's so we do all kinds of just fun stuff, whatever we can change into something useful and steampunk.
Right, like just the basic everyday things that we see. We're like, okay, let's see how we can make this steampunk.
Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not.
Well, we love the stuff that you guys have done and the stuff we saw down at the Ren Fair. And, of course, the piece that I'm staring at right now, because it's getting ready to go into the box for Sci-Fi Bartow, which is a beautiful masquerade mask with windmills and cogs and
the propeller. You can just
it's awesome, and it's a beautiful set and a beautiful piece we'll have on the set at Sci-Fi Bartow. So we have Ray Ballard on the line too from Heartland Steampunk Association. To be more than just a group of 2 or 3 people that are hanging out doing steampunk, to be an association. Wow, how did you manage to find all these steampunkers, man?
So originally we all kind of started with the Central Florida Steampunk Association out of kind of DeLand area, Sanford area. And the group kept growing and growing and growing. And it's right now I think it's been around for 12, 15 years. Well, we kept expanding out. And so we're actually located over in Lake Wales, Winter Haven area. And there's also people that are over in Tampa Bay. And so we approached the administrators of the Central Florida Steampunk and said, hey, do you mind if we spin off, start our own groups in certain areas, and reach out to people in our areas and explain what steampunk is? So we took the central area of Highlands, Polk County, Hardy County, and Lake County, so up to 27 corridor, and just started going out to the different conventions, started telling people about the Heartland Steampunk Association. If you're in the area, join us. We're doing building events. And people just started hitting our Facebook page and liking us. They started coming out to events. And it just started to grow. And I got to tell you, the one thing that's great about the steampunk societies and the steampunk groups that are out there, we're all family. We all support each other. We all help each other. And we just go through and just push the steampunk love.
You know what's amazing about, and I say this about all of our science fiction fantasy comic community, is that, we all know we have friends from work, we have, people we know in our neighborhood.
Look, it's my friend from work.
That's right. We all have that. And, but your connection, your early connection is tenuous because it's based on that thing you have to do. You have to go to work. You have to go to school. But when the community comes together for science fiction, for fantasy, for steampunk, we're coming together not based on something we have to do, but based on something we love to do. And
Absolutely.
those relationships are so strong. And whether you see each other 3 times a year or once a year or 3 times a week, those connections are so incredibly strong that the community becomes something very, very special. And we are always privileged to be a part of this community and just even some small part of it. So you're absolutely right. It's the community is everything, and it makes everything you're doing and all the hard work worthwhile, especially when you have those opportunities like this weekend coming up at Sci-Fi Bartow to show off what you do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And what you're passionate about. That is fantastic. We're going to make sure that there are links for Ray and Tara and MaryAnn all down in our description of this episode so that you can find it. We want to remind everybody you'll be listening to this on Thursday night, anytime from Thursday night 7 o'clock on through the weekend. It is the 6th Sci-Fi Bartow, the 6th annual Sci-Fi Bartow, February 16th, hosted by Sean and Lori Sardinsky in Bartow, Florida. The theme this year is steampunk.
Steampunk.
And if you want to know what steampunk is, just come to Bartow. We're going to show you.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. And, yeah, so we hope to see everybody out there. And, we love to make sure that we link people together, which is great. So, Ray, we're happy you're on the show tonight. We're happy that you're here with our friends from Coggler Emporium. If you guys are ever looking for an aesthetic that you guys need to do for a cosplay or something, reach out to these guys. They are amazing.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, guys, wow, where are we? I went through my notes.
I was going to say how much we appreciate your support and love of the local arts. I think that's amazing. It's, us local artists don't get very, much props here in Orlando. It's just not as big as it is everywhere else. So for you to be out there and supporting artists and people and writers and producers and all of that and yourself, I just think you're just amazing. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. And if we weren't on the radio, everybody would see me blushing. And
I can see him.
Yeah, guys, truly, whether it's talking to cosplayers or creative minds of any kind, artists, artisans, writers, filmmakers, we have gotten to talk to some amazing people in the last 4 years. And in that time, it has truly been a privilege to support the arts and entertainment community, especially that we have here in Central Florida, because remarkable individuals, a wonderful community to be a part of, and we're so blessed to have been invited in and allowed to kind of sit at the table with people who are far more creative and absolutely brilliant compared to me. I get to talk into a mic. I mean, that's my world, And even the girls aren't disagreeing with me. They're like, "Yep, that's all he does." And so it is.
Cricket.
Yeah, so it is. Thank you guys so much for letting me come and play in your sandbox. It's a wonderful time. And
you know what this makes me want to do?
What's that?
This makes me want to watch Sanctuary.
Yes, that was wonderful.
Oh man.
Yeah. And
there goes some hours.
That's right. Sadly, it's a quick binge through a season because they take the best things that were ever created on television and they run them through one season, and then after that we get 27 seasons of the Kardashians. So
you know what's funny though? Ray earlier had mentioned 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, when he was talking about Extraordinary Gentleman with Nemo, and I was reminded while we were working with Michael, because we had asked Michael if he knew what steampunk was, and he didn't have quite the precise definition that we did, but he's like, yeah, steampunk is gears and bronze and copper stuff. And we're like, yeah. And it occurred to me that he recently watched some of the Lemony Snicket's Unfortunate Events.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that he remembered was their Nemo ship. Because it was very much like that.
Well, and what's great about the today, and I think MaryAnn and Tara actually alluded to this earlier, and that is that everything old is new again. And so there is a sense of comfort that we're seeking when we're watching our TV shows or reading books or watching movies. And even if a story isn't a steampunk story, there are always those elements now that are built in, those little mechanical elements, and we miss it, I think. I mean, I know, I'm from a generation of guys that used to like to work on their cars. And now, if you don't have a computer engineering degree, don't open the hood. You won't see anything you can recognize. And I mean, that's great for the technology. My car does things, pairs up with my phone and does all those cool things. But you can't take a wrench out and just go to work. like
I'll
you used
fix it
to.
with Legos.
There you go. See that?
Speaking of wrenches, because you can take a wrench out and work on Serenity. Doesn't Firefly count somewhere in like a steampunk? Isn't there like a subgenre of steampunk that would fall into?
If I can mention actually really quick, there are subgenres. So if you go Western, that's actually called dustpunk.
Dustpunk.
If you go more diesel military, like real big bulky, that's actually called diesel punk.
I love diesel punk. Yes.
Ooh.
That's my Argo character. That's one of my big characters you're going to see this weekend at Sci-Fi Bartow.
Awesome.
And then there's the Victorian look.
I want to see you. Where could I find you?
You'll find us on Steampunk Alley down at Sci-Fi Bartow. And if I can quickly say, guys, you need to come to Sci-Fi Bartow for one reason, if not anything, for all the geekdom, because it's an absolutely free event.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it is.
That's true.
Well, I get to meet you for free.
There you go.
Yep.
Yes. Sci-Fi Bartow, again, everybody, is the 6th annual Sci-Fi Bartow, Saturday, February 16th. I would tell you an address, but it's not necessary. It is downtown Main Street, Bartow. Come there. It's free. Find a place to park, walk around, see amazing steampunk designs. And you know what? Because it's just a wonderful science fiction festival, you're going to see all the steampunk that's going on, which is the theme of this year's show. And you're also going to see some other sci-fi familiar staples that are just going to be down there, cosplayers of all kinds. And it's going to be, we're looking forward, it's going to be a great time. I mean, look, anytime that you can throw a party with 20,000 of your closest friends in the middle of the street,
it's an excellent party.
Call that a win. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sean and Lori, for the best party in Central Florida.
Absolutely, man. They do a great job every year, and this will be our 3rd year at Sci-Fi Bartow, and we're so excited. We're going to be on stage, too, all day long. We've got live music coming down there. We've got Landon Nolan out of Orlando.
Who has just discovered steampunk, by the way.
He has.
Landon Nolan, he
He actually had to Google it while we had him on the radio the other day. And then, of course, we've got the Kitchen Killers will be on stage with us. We're going to have the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS talking about Doctor Who, the DC Watchtower folks talking about the DC Universe and all the great news coming up down the pike with that, and, of course, us on stage.
Yes, sharing everything.
Sharing everything about everyone. That's right. All the things.
All of them. All of them.
Guys, we're down to 1 minute, so I want to thank Ray Ballard from the Heartland Steampunk Association for being on with us tonight. Thank you so much, Pokey and Tara, for coming on from Coggler Emporium. And thank you, all of you out there listening. We couldn't do what we do if you guys weren't providing an audience and sharing our wonderful creative minds with the World Wide Web.
And happy Valentine's Day.
That's right. Today, when you're listening to this, is Valentine's Day. So hopefully, while you've been listening to the show, learning about steampunk, you didn't forget the flowers or the candy or the teddy bear or whatever it is that will get you out of hot water.
Yes.
Yes.
Or a timepiece.
A nice timepiece. A little heart with clockworks in it would be perfect for tonight's steampunk show. All right, guys, we have to wrap it up. As we do, we're going to thank our partners and friends at Something Unique Magazine, Famous Faces and Funnies, Space Coast Comics, Krypton Radio, of course, our great friends at Pound the Grape, who are getting ready to open a new location here really, really, really soon.
And one of our new partners, Celestial Healings.
Celestial Healings, that's right, from upstate New York. And, of course, our really good friend, J. Bauer Art. And we want to thank them all for supporting the show and for sharing these shows all over the World Wide Web and our videos and everything else that we do. It's a wonderful thing to be a part of this community. Remember, everybody, subscribe, log on, tune in, and see who we're hanging with next.